What's up, y'all? This is Nick with From the Ground Up DIY, and today I'm going to show you all how to cut some glass and how you can give a broken picture frame some tender loving care. So recently, I was given the task to hang a picture on the wall in my girlfriend's place, but while I was doing so, I accidentally nailed on the picture and it ended up breaking the glass on the picture frame. And instead of buying a whole new frame, I decided that I was going to replace the glass on this frame and make the frame look as good as new. To fix this picture frame, the first thing that I have to do is to get the broken glass out the frame. So I ripped off the brown paper that was on the back, and then I pulled back all the tabs and then removed the broken glass from inside the frame. I measured the inside length and width of the picture frame so that I can determine what size glass that I need to get, and I also use a digital caliper to measure the thickness of the glass, and the new glass that I need to get needs to be at least 19 7/8 of an inch long, 15 7/8 of an inch wide, and 3/32 of an inch thick. I went to my local hardware store and picked up a sheet of glass that was closest to the size that I needed, and for this project I ended up having to make 2 trips to the hardware store because the first sheet of glass that I picked up was a 16-inch by 20-inch sheet, and I ended up breaking this sheet while cutting because it was too close to the original dimensions that I needed. And I'm going to explain later in the video why it's not good to use a sheet this size, but after that failed attempt I ended up getting this 24-inch by 30-inch sheet. To cut the glass, I'm going to be using a rolling glass cutter, some glass cutting oil, and a straight edge. I used a sheet of tempered hardboard to make my straight edge, and I cut out a piece that was a little longer than the length of my glass by using my jigsaw, and then I drew an arrow towards the manufactured edge because I knew this edge was absolutely straight and I didn't want to get confused about which edge to use when I start cutting the glass. Before cutting the glass, I need to set up my rolling glass cutter, and the glass cutter I have comes with 3 different cutting wheels, and since my glass is 3/32 of an inch thick, which converts to approximately 2.4 millimeters, I'll be using the 2 through 6 millimeter wheel to cut the glass. Now that I have the correct wheel attached, it's time to add the glass cutting oil, and to add the oil, I unscrewed the knob on the back of the cutter, and then I used a dropper to add a couple drops of oil into the cutter. And to make sure that there's enough oil in the cutter, you want to make sure that you grab a sheet of paper and roll the glass cutter on the paper as you see here. And when you do this, the cutter should leave streaks like this, and if it doesn't, more oil needs to be added to the cutter. The purpose of the oil is to make sure that the cutting wheel is running smoothly so that you can get a nice clean score on your glass, so you want to make sure that you don't skip this step. I went ahead and took the plastic off the glass, and then I put a piece of scrap plywood on my table so that I can have a flat surface to cut on. I marked my desired length on the glass first, which is 19 7/8 of an inch, using a Sharpie. I grabbed my straight edge and lined it up with the mark that I drew, and to score the glass, I pressed the glass cutter gently into the glass and ran the cutter along the straight edge, and as you can hear, there's a consistent squeaking noise, and you want to make sure that you hear this noise when you're making your score, because if you don't, that means that the glass is not being cut correctly. After making the first score, I flipped the glass over and made another score on the same line, making sure that I keep firm pressure on the glass for a consistent cut. Now that I scored both sides of the glass, I went ahead and grabbed some shims so that I can go ahead and snap the glass apart. And for the shims that I'm using, I went ahead and made these out of some scrap plywood that I had laying around. And I used my jigsaw to cut out the small triangles that you see here, and I made sure to leave the ends of the shims as thin as possible so that I could place the shim underneath the glass and snap it right on the scored line. While trying to put the shim underneath the glass ended up snapping without me putting any pressure on it, and the cut came out clean without me having to use the shim, which was pretty surprising to me. I repeated the same process to cut my glass to the desired width, which is 15 7/8 of an inch wide, and this time the glass didn't snap without any added pressure, so I put the shim underneath my score line, and then I applied pressure on both sides of the glass until the glass completely snapped. Crispy. Earlier in this video, I stated that you shouldn't use a sheet of glass that's too close to the dimensions you need, and the reason for this is that it will be hard to actually snap the glass since only a small piece will be coming off. For this 16" by 20" sheet of glass, which was the sheet of glass that I tried to use for this project, but it didn't work out, I only needed to tack off about 2 to 3/16 of an inch, and once I made both of my scores, I tried to snap the glass apart, but the piece was way too small to apply the right pressure, and I eventually ended up breaking the glass altogether. To avoid this, you want to make sure that your sheet of glass is big enough to where you can apply pressure on both sides of your score so that you can have a smooth, clean snap. I put the newly cut glass into my picture frame for a test fit, and the glass ended up fitting nice and snug. Now that I have the glass out the way, I can finish restoring the actual picture frame, and the picture frame still has strips of brown paper on the back from when I had to rip it off, so I went ahead and grabbed my chisel so that I can scrape the rest of the paper off. The frame ended up having this sticky residue on it from the brown paper that I ripped off, so to get rid of this sticky stuff, I decided to use some rubbing alcohol. So I poured some of the alcohol on a towel, and I made sure that I wiped the entire frame, and then I just let the alcohol sit on the frame for a few minutes, and after that I went ahead and wiped all the alcohol off, making sure that I rubbed the frame thoroughly, and once I did this, the residue came off just fine. The last thing that I need to do is to take the hardware off the frame, so I removed the sawtooth hanger, and then I went ahead and sanded off all the small bits of brown paper that was still left on the frame. With the frame nice and clean, it's time to spruce the frame up with a new paint job, and I'm going to be spray painting the frame, so I need to hang the frame up so that I can do all the spray painting at once. I planned on using a piece of rope to tie to the frame so that I can hang it, but I didn't have any rope on me at the time, so instead I decided to use some floss. Once I started spray painting, I realized that this wasn't one of my most brightest ideas, and I had the frame positioned too close to the edge, and the snow was blowing on the frame, getting the spray paint wet, and then this happened. The picture frame broke all into pieces, and I realized that the frame wasn't even made out of wood, it was made out of this foam material, and this explains why the picture frame broke so easy. I decided to make a new picture frame instead of fixing the old one that I broke, since it wasn't even made of real wood, and I plan to show you guys the process of making a picture frame in a different video, but for the new frame, I decided to keep the dimensions of the frame the same as the original. To spray paint the new frame, I'll be using this Rust-Oleum flat black spray paint, and I decided to do the spraying inside this time so that I won't have any more accidents. My original picture frame already had tabs to hold my picture and glass in place, but for my new picture frame, I decided to pick up some of these churn buttons, and I made sure to install enough of them so that the glass and picture would be held firmly in place, and with that being done, the picture frame is now complete. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and on your way out, make sure that you like this video and leave a comment down below on any tips you might have for cutting glass or restoring the picture frame. And my favorite part of this project was learning how to cut glass, and I'm glad that I got to learn this new skill to have under my tool belt. And if you enjoy content like this, make sure that you support the channel by subscribing so that you can see more videos like this. But with all that being said, y'all, peace, love, many blessings, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.